Ladies and gentlemen, we are live from the Isle of Man in the UK. This is John and Mike's MMA Corner.
Firstly, Nick, thank you for joining us. Now, you are fighting Aaron Ely, or Eli, whichever way you want to say it, on the Titan FC card. Now, this is at a bantamweight, but Aaron was saying that you two kind of agreed to come in at 135.
Yeah.
And I believe that you fight at 125 usually. Is that the case? Is it for this one?
Yeah, Aaron actually had a couple fights at 25, and that's where I would like to be at 25, but we both walk around the same weight naturally, so obviously we got the extra weight, I guess, you know.
Yeah, it makes it easier, doesn't it? If you can both agree to that, it's so. And like you say, that's the crazy thing about the lower weight classes. It is that I think £10. I think that's actually too much, in my opinion. I think the weight class should maybe be a lot smaller. Maybe maybe £6 or £7 difference in the weight classes, because when you look at percentage of it, it's quite a difference. Do you feel then it's a bit of a toll then going down that little extra £10?
Well, definitely if you talk like percentage of body weight, you know, it's a lot bigger gap for us little guys than it is for the heavyweights, but I mean, I wrestled growing up all through, you know, childhood and high school, college, and I don't know, I think you just have to get used to that for a while, so those who really want to make a weight can, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, some guys have done wrestling in high school, and they did find the weight gap, the weight cutting not too bad, because they've done, it's quite brutal weight cuts some guys used to do, but I believe they've brought in now, which I think is a far smarter thing to do, is that hydration test they do in wrestling now, don't they, at high schools?
Yeah. That's a good thing, you know, they're trying to make the sport safer. I don't know that it necessarily does. I think people will always find a way, you know, a way to get around and stuff like that. But it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it is, because I think especially during your teenage years, it is. I think health is huge, you know, and I think being healthy in your teenage years, that's a very big development of your physical body. That time your body's developing at such a speed, it's what you're going to be left with for the rest of your life. So guys that were doing huge weight cuts in wrestling, it was affecting their growth. You know, they would be shorter than they were meant to be, or because they're so malnourished, their development of their physique was never going to be what potential maximum it could be. And I think we might see, you know, obviously guys fighting closer to their natural weight. Like you say, there's always going to be guys getting around it, and even to an extent, take away wrestling, I think if I just talk about combat sports, you know, guys that maybe do performance enhancing drugs, no matter what tests that people are doing now, there's always going to be a new doctor out there coming up with a new formula to get you around each test. So you're always going to find a random person popping for here, that, you know, for different things. It's just a way of life. So even with it comes to weight cutting, guys are going to get around it. Now, Nick, your fight on Titan, you're a very, you know, experienced fighter. Coming on to Titan FC, it's on UFC Fight Pass. What do you feel? You know, when you get to this stage, you know, you've had, you know, like I say, you're an experienced fighter. What are you trying to get to now? Are you trying to get to that UFC level? Are you wanting to get onto the cards where you can push guys at that level? What is it you're trying to accomplish now?
I mean, obviously the UFC or, you know, anything like that would be just, you know, it's the pinnacle of the sport. That's what everyone's trying to compete for. But I think after all the fights I've had and just kind of where I'm at in life now, I'm just doing it to enjoy it. You know, I like getting in there. I like the competition. I like, you know, just the grind of preparing for it and just the whole atmosphere of being there. So.
Yeah, I think as well, it is enjoying the sport. That is the key. I think when, like I said before, because you're an experienced fighter, it gets to the point where you don't want to be going into the gym for the sake of going in because, I've got another fight, I've got to train for this, you've got to do it. You really do when you've had after your first few fights and that kind of, I call it the honeymoon period for stuff like that. You know, that kind of that buzz of that first fight is gone. You really do need to have that passion to continue in any sport, not just mixed martial arts. And the fact that you found that kind of balance, then it really is important. And with Titan, the good thing is sign up with them. You do get quite a depth with the guys that they've got now. You know, even if you want, you can even mix between, like say, you could do a bantamweight fight here. Looks like you can switch between 2 weight classes. They're starting to fill up their roster with really good balanced fighters that are always going to challenge you in different areas.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they have a lot of talented fighters signed right now, so it's interesting. It's exciting to see how they're still growing. You know, even though they've been around for a while, they're still improving, getting better, and they have to deal with UFC Fight Pass now, and that's only going to help their brand even more. So I'm excited to be part of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It does help. It helps not just the promotion. It helps fighters like yourself. You get when you're on the Fight Pass, you're marketed to such a wider audience, and not just audience, but other shows, other promotions. So you're in their eye a lot more, like the bigger shows, let's say. And I think it is something that really does benefit fighters. I think stuff like in the States, obviously you got Fight Pass, and they've signed a couple of promotions. Obviously Titan, Invicta. They've done Shuto down in Brazil, and they've expanded. They've obviously went to other countries, and within. It's almost similar to what's happened in the UK. What we've happened lately, there's a company called MMA TV, and they stream fights on their site, and just local shows. So, like for example, it would be the equivalent of a Titan or let's say like an RFA, etc. You know, these shows that aren't UFC or Bellator, but they are in that mix of just below them, and I think it's great exposure for fighters, and I think it's great as well for the sport that people can. There's more accessibility to other fighters, because a lot of people just think it's only the UFC and that's all there is.
Yeah, definitely. With all the social media and things going on these days, it's definitely a lot easier for fighters to get noticed. You know, I think before a lot of it was almost who you knew or who could throw a word in for you or just luck, but now people can actually go out there and build a name for themselves.
Yes, you're right. It was about who you know. Like you say, you get a couple of highlight reels, it goes viral, and that's when things start coming towards you, like all the offers, etc. That's when you can start to plant seeds to go somewhere and make a name for yourself.
Definitely.
Now, with Aaron, he was respectful about coming up against you, and for him, he does feel that you would be a very good accomplishment for him to overcome. Because you are the more experienced fighter, you've got a lot more kind of knowledge in that kind of hat there, in that brain of yours, in experience. When you come up against someone like Aaron, he is an experienced fighter in himself. It's not like he's a baby. He's had a few fights under his belt. When you get to fight someone like Aaron, do you feel then that you have to kind of up your game a little bit in the sense of when you get someone young, they've got that ridiculous kind of like I said to you, that honeymoon period hunger. Do you feel that you have to kind of match that to make, and also because you can bring in that experience, that calmness to manage to balance the kind of the intensity with obviously controlling the fight?
I don't think my game plan or my mentality really changes based on my opponent. I always try to stay calm. Obviously, you want to pick a fight where you're feeling comfortable and where it's going for you. A guy like Aaron, though, I mean, you definitely have to be cautious. He's tough. He's a grinder. He's never been finished. I think all of his wins, he finished people. So it's going to be a tough fight, and I think I have that mentality of just ready for the war, just ready to fight it out and have a long battle with this guy.
So coming up to the fight, like I said, you've done a lot of fight camps. How do you keep your fight camps interesting? You know, because as much as you want to do the same thing every time, you can't do it, can you? You have to change things up a bit. So, what are you trying to do to keep your fight camps interesting, and also, you know, always trying to add? You want to keep adding to your arsenal. As a mixed martial artist, you're never going to be the complete fighter. No one can. There's not enough hours and not enough time. But what are you doing to try and keep growing in that stage?
Honestly, here in Wyoming, there's no MMA gym, so my fight camps are quite different for every fight. You know, it just kind of depends on, you know, whether wrestling is going on or not, or if I can find, you know, some guys to come in and spar with me, or if the boxing gym's got a practice going on. So my fight camps are pretty random as it is, but I do, you know, take time and try to prepare for strengths of my opponent, or, you know, areas where I've been vulnerable before, and try to make that somewhat of a concern of mine going into my fight camp. And other than that, I mean, I just control the things that I can, you know, my conditioning and things like that.
So you said obviously improving on the areas that you were weakened in say a previous fight. Is that something that you and maybe your coach sits down and talks about? Do you get people to come in and maybe kind of just have and say, look, watch my fight, what do you think's missing? Do you get people from the outside looking in to maybe give you advice and tips? Because sometimes you can't see what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a little of both, you know. I think my coach, you know, probably that he was willing to, you know, he's one of my best friends also, so I think that maybe he's a little more brutally honest than others sometimes, but that's a good thing, you know. My wife, she thinks that she's a MMA coach, so she likes to critique me and tell me what I need to do or work on, or, you know, if I'm not keeping my hands up, she makes sure to be the first one to tell me, stuff like that. So it's really just a group effort from everybody.
I was going to say, that'll be interesting, having the wife telling you what's going on, especially if you lost a fight. You're like, really, love, really? Do you want to get in and do it? Go on.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, hey, do you know what? It's nice that you can take people as well, come in and talk to you to explain maybe what they saw. And I think that's a lot. Some people, you know, and that's what I've talked to people about MMA, that maybe, for the best way to put it is, when I go somewhere, I get people say, oh, because I compete as well over here, and people might know that I compete, etc., or they know that about the podcast or whatever they do. They say, oh, what do you think of the Conor fight coming up, or the Rousey? You know, they do the typical stuff, and you can tell that they're not martial arts, but it's interesting to get their point of view, and you just sit there and you listen and you think, right, there's nothing constructive. And they've got clearly no idea, because all they talk about is Conor. And I'm like, do you know who Jose Aldo is? He is the 145 division. Like, there's not been another 145er. And it blows my mind. But, you know, I sit there and I go, I've got to remember, they've probably only just heard of this sport. And they only know one guy, and they only know one thing about him. Now, that's what I find interesting, is when you get people from the outside come in, they sometimes point out things that you really don't notice because you get so into it, and that's what I quite like sometimes about that, when you get someone who doesn't really have a clue, but they just say something, it might be a little gem.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think people new to the sport have a different view than someone who's watched it forever, or somebody who, you know, you talked about Aldo, and, you know, someone who's watched him come from the WC into the UFC. I think maybe you're a little, I don't know, people can get biased, you know?
Yeah.
They've seen him dominate for so long, they don't give McGregor a chance. But sometimes that, you know, that outside opinion, that new guy sees things a little bit different.
Absolutely, I agree. Have you then not thought about maybe going to somewhere for like a couple of weeks or something, or for like a short period of time, to train, you know, obviously, like, you know, you got your Team Alpha Males, Black Zillions, TriStar, you know, Alliance, MMA. You know, I'm just spitting out some of the bigger names there. Have you thought about branching out there just for a little period of time, just to see, you know, just to get a different perspective?
Yeah. Well, when I first got married, we were living in Denver, and I was training down there. A good friend of mine was the wrestling coach at Grudge Training Center, And so I worked out there for a time, and now that we're back in Wyoming, he actually runs the team high altitude, Leaster Bowen. And so whenever I, have a few days here and there off of work, it's always good to run down there and get in with those guys. So.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, especially that high altitude. It is something that really does make a difference in fight games, and it does make a difference in performance. I've seen.
Yeah, it's nice, definitely. It's good too. Living here in Wyoming, we're over 6,000 feet in elevation. And it's high altitude just about every day for some people.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, it's something that people don't, if they don't research it to understand the effects it has, because a lot of people start wearing these. They make me laugh when they wear those masks, like the Bane mask, and they sit there and they do like a session in their mask, and I sit there and I think, there was no point in wearing that mask, because that has no relevance to high altitude. Unless you live in high altitude, wearing a mask for an hour is going to have no effect on you. That is all placebo effect in their head, that it's making a difference, because unless you live in high altitude, it's not going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, I don't want to put down that brand or companies that make them, because they'll probably sue me or something for saying that. But if you like the placebo effect, it's fine. It's then again, again, that's education. If you look into it and read it, you'd understand it a bit more. Yeah, Nick, like I said to you before, Titan FC's on Fight Pass. With that happening, is that something that helped decide your signing with them? Is that something that was a kind of selling point for it?
Not really. Obviously, I think that's a bonus, but just the overall, I think just the way they run the company is really appealing to me. They do a lot for the troops, a lot for our vets over here, and that's something that's important to me. My dad was in the Marines. I have a lot of friends and family who served in the military. I think that's a great cause, and just their UFC clause, that's kind of doesn't happen often. So I think there's a lot about Titan. It's just really good company and draws me to them. So. Yeah,
they got Jason Knight just signed up. He was signed with Titan. He's just went over there as well. So that's shows that if you're with Titan, it does help. It can help that exposure, getting into the UFC. And like you said, with the vets, they do. And Lex McMahon as well. He makes a lot of effort, obviously being a former Marine, and that's something me and Mike really kind of adhered to. Mike's he's not here right now, but he's ex-service. I'm currently serving. It's great that they do that. You see, it's not something you'd see that much in the UK. It's something that we would like to see, but besides that, I think the promotion, the way it's growing, it's good, and the way they look after the fighters. You're always going to get maybe 1 out of 100 that isn't happy, but I think as long as you can start to just correct some things, every promotion's always learning, and it's beautiful the ones that do accept it. And Nick, I think you're in great hands with Titan. I think the opportunities that can open up now with signing with them, it's going to be greater than maybe before. And you know what? I look forward to getting to see you compete really on a live show. I tune in. Even though we're in the UK, we always tune in for the Titan cards on Fight Pass, and me and Mike will definitely be watching it. So Nick, before I let you go, how about you let me know and everyone else at home how they can maybe join you on social media?
You can find me on Facebook, just at Nick Mamalis, and my Twitter handle is
N Mamalis. Okay, N Mamalis. Right. We will always, ladies and gentlemen, put the picture of Nick on our Facebook page, and we will also put the link, like the social media bits with it as well, so you can all jump on there. And also, Nick, I'm sure you'll have someone sponsor and help you out. Can you give a shout out to them just to let them know that you appreciate their help?
Yeah, everyone who's been in the gym, helping me out, pushing me, all get to come in and try to beat me up here and there. My family for being so supportive.
Yeah, of course. You got the other your missus, who's always going to tell you to get your hands up, because she's, she doesn't want to have a guy with, she doesn't want to date Elephant Man. you know. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about your sponsors? Have you got any sponsors there, buddy?
No sponsor. So if there's anybody out there, get a hold of me. I'm willing to wear whatever.
Oh, Nick, bloody hell, man. You're going to be on UFC Fight Pass, which that's a great selling point in itself, man. I tell you what, you could probably go speak to a lot of companies and I'll jump all over you, but do you know what? I will speak to you off air about a couple of places you can speak to possibly, and I'll give you a heads up. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you can jump on Nick's social media stuff. Tune in to UFC Fight Pass when it goes on Titan FC 36 against Aaron. And thanks again, Nick, for coming on to speak to us.